20 away.
You can blame Tanya. She made Tony do something. I'm going to lose my job because Tanya made Tony go do something.
We're at 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Good morning and welcome to the Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020 Board of County Commissioners meeting. I'm Kate Flavin, Public Information Officer with Sedgwick County. We are having a few technical difficulties this morning with our website, so viewers are not able to watch our meeting on our website at sedgwickcounty.org. However, you can still watch us on KPTS Channel 8, on Sedgwick County's Facebook page, and on our YouTube channel. Commissioners still have our plexiglass barriers between them here at the bench. Staff are wearing face masks, and we are socially distanced. There were 3 topics covered at the commission meeting yesterday morning. There was a facilities energy audit review of responses. A request for information was sent out earlier this year, and our facilities director provided information on what responses came in, and they will work with purchasing now to determine next steps moving forward to actually work to find an auditor to provide this energy audit for 13 county facilities. There was a COVID-19 update. All of our dashboard numbers are looking good, trending in the right direction. However, we are testing less people. There were only about 700 people tested last week. We did open up testing and sampling to those who work in classrooms, in-person classrooms here in Sedgwick County. And we will also soon be offering saliva testing. We also had an update from the elections office about ballot boxes. The elections office secured 14 ballot boxes for vote by mail ballots. One was installed before the primary election here in front of the main courthouse, and there are 13 others that will be installed before the general election around the county, so look for more information on that. September is National Preparedness Month, so it's very fitting that we have Assistant County Manager Rusty Leeds here with us this morning to introduce us to our new emergency manager. So, Rusty?
Good morning, Rusty.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. I'm happy to be here this morning to introduce to you our new Emergency Management Director. Julie Stimson comes to us from the University of Kansas School of Medicine, where she's been serving as the Associate Director of Safety and Emergency Management for about 5 years. She is a retiree from the Air Force, where she also served in the capacity of military public health and has real-life experience from that time in emergency response and emergency and disaster response. Julie has a degree in healthcare management. She has a master's degree in emergency management and is currently working on her doctorate in emergency management as well. So she comes to us with both education and real-life experience through both military and through the KU Med School government type service. And so we're very welcome to have her on board during this unique time to help continue the leadership in our emergency management division as we move through COVID and any other thing that comes our way. So with that, I'll let you speak to Julie.
Okay. Good morning, Julie. Welcome.
Good morning.
Welcome to Sedgwick County.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all.
My pleasure.
I look forward to working with you all and getting out in the community and working through this pandemic and any other disasters and things that may come our way.
All right. Well, it sounds like your resume, thanks for your previous service in the military and at the
My
KU
honor.
Med Center, and your resume sounds fantastic. Personally, I hope that we don't get to see you very often. That means that there's an emergency. So.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No disrespect intended, of course.
Absolutely. Yep.
But anyway, welcome.
Thank you.
We're glad you're here. Thank you.
All right. And this afternoon, we will celebrate the completion of a road improvement project at 55th and Meridian in Hayesville. So the event will begin at 1:30 p.m. this afternoon, and you can park at the campus high school parking lot. Tomorrow morning, we have a live town hall with local doctors, including Dr. Menz. This town hall will be streamed on Sedgwick County's Facebook page and on our YouTube channel at 8:30 a.m. So it'll be a Q&A with these local doctors, Dr. Menz, Dr. Ebersol, and Dr. Antonios. So they'll be answering questions related to COVID-19. And we had requested people to comment online with their questions for doctors to prepare. We will also be taking questions at the event on social media as well. So that's a very important event for you to watch for tomorrow. On the agenda this morning, we have meeting minutes, an advisory board appointment, and one resignation. We'll receive an update from Exploration Place. There's a resolution to amend the District 4 Citizens Advisory Board. You'll have a discussion related to the CARES Act and a report of the Board of Bids and Contracts, and we also have a fire agenda. So, Chairman, I'll hand the meeting to you.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Appreciate the summary of yesterday's for the public to hear. With that, we will call the meeting to order of Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020 for the Board of Sedgwick County Commissioners. Madam Clerk?
Invocation, to be observed by a moment of silence. Please remain standing for the flag salute.
Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Roll call. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Present.
Commissioner Dennis.
Present.
Commissioner Howell.
Present.
Commissioner Cruz.
Present.
Chairman Meitzner.
Present. Madam Clerk, next item.
Public agenda.
Commissioners, you received some of the email responses, electronic responses we've had. Received those yesterday. Anybody have any comments on any of those? Commissioner Howell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I read through them. Just a couple of points I'd like to make, and I'd like to make a motion to receive and file them as well into my comments today. But we received a number of comments, about 7 or 8 here, that are basically advocating for return back to normal, or a rescinding of our order, or a moving away from masks. It's kind of the general consensus. There's a couple that don't really apply to Sedgwick County Board of County Commissioners. But I was going to say two of the comments deal with the issue of how do we calculate the positive rate. I thought if someone in the audience is willing to take that on, I'm thinking maybe Manager Kaufman might be willing to take that up. Two questions on how we calculate positive rate, rather than me try to answer that. I think somebody ought to speak to that one particular question, if that'd be okay.
Okay.
Commissioners, Tim Kaufman, Deputy County Manager. Particularly for the statistics that we use on the metrics, we are calculating the total number of positives divided by the total number of tests. That's our positive rate.
And that's also a 14-day rolling average, is it correct?
That's my understanding as well.
And is there anything taken out of that numerator or denominator that's before the calculation?
Not for those two calculations.
All right, that answers the question completely. Thank you for that answer.
Thank you,
So with
Tim.
that, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we receive and file these comments.
Okay, I'll second that. There's been a motion and a second to receive and file. I don't see any other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz. Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. Also, in the public agenda, we do have 3 people signed up to address us this morning, so we will proceed with that. And first up, I believe this is Mr. William Stout. So identify yourself and your address, and you'll have 5
I'd
minutes.
prefer not to give you my address. This is my right under the Kansas law, and you have it on file from the email I was required to give you personal information. Some of you know me. Some of you know of me. You've all received emails from me at one time or another. My name is Bill Stout. I live in West Wichita. I'm only required by law to give you that information, and that's what I want to talk about today, is the law. You see, I find it interesting that recently we've been more interested in policy than we have in law. I'd like to begin by reading a portion of the email I received that allowed me to be here to redress my own government today. It says, you'll be asked to wear a mask when entering the building. If you're unable to wear a mask, a face shield is acceptable. If you're unable to wear either, you won't be allowed to enter the building. That's interesting, considering the topic that the first speaker on the last meeting brought up was how the county wasn't in compliance with the ADA, which is federal law. And we even discussed it here, but apparently nothing changed. So I guess, again, policy is more important than law. It's concerning that the government seems to have forgotten that you're our employees, not our rulers. On the 19th, Mr. Stoltz stated, Judge Goring has made it clear that to our security staff that people will not come into this building, to his courtroom, without masks or face shields. He also said apparently their rules didn't quite align with some of the things they were hearing. Once again, policy supersedes law. This is a public building. You're public servants. You're paid for with tax dollars. This building, these courtrooms, belong to we the people, not he the judge. And not this entire building is courtrooms, just like the room we're standing in now. But yet, as I'm sitting across the hall, I'm told if I'm going to be in this building, I have to have a face mask on, even if I'm not in a courtroom or I'm 6 feet away from any human being. That's interesting. Not everybody in this room has a face mask on. You don't get to make your own rules and policy and decide the law doesn't apply. That's just not how it works. I spent a great deal of my life in the law, as did my father. Many of you know that. And there's no law on the books in the state of Kansas that says I cannot enter a public building without a piece of cloth over my face. That statute doesn't exist. A judge's order does apply to courtrooms. I absolutely agree. But this isn't a courtroom. Neither are the hallways. Neither is the entryway. We, the people, have grown tired of what we've been subjected to by policy superseding law. Way back in March, Dr. Menz, when he forced the closing that you all agreed to of so many businesses, depriving them of earning a living and paying their bills, he continued to be paid, as did all of you, with our money. Yet you took away the ability of many of us to earn a living. Think about that when you discover due process. We were told that forced closure would last, and I quote, 2 weeks. Well, here we are 6 months later. We've been deprived of many liberties. Countless people have been bankrupted. Countless businesses will never reopen. All of that was supposed to last 2 weeks. I guess due process doesn't matter either. But should I be concerned? I mean, it was only small businesses. That's what we were told. It was only 2 weeks. It was only restaurants. It was only non-essential businesses and non-essential employees. By the way, there's no such thing. If that's how you earn your living, it's an essential business. And if that's how you pay your bills for your family, you're an essential employee. It was only bars. Wait, that was twice. It was only nightclubs. That was twice. And now it's only a mask. Well, what's it only next? Because a lot of us are tired of the words "it's only," especially while I said before, you never lost your jobs or income, but you forced other people to lose theirs. You stood by, you made jokes, you took liberties and livelihoods away from people and private businesses, and so many in our community, and you, quite frankly, and the rest of government involved are responsible for the damage that's been done financially and emotionally on the community. You should be ashamed of yourselves. We, the people, expect and deserve better. And now we read that Dr. Menz is suggesting that the community be subjected to wearing these masks through the end of the calendar year. Well, quite frankly, I find it ridiculous. Because maybe I'm not very good at math, but that seems like longer than 2 weeks. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stout. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate you taking time to come out and speak with us this morning, and I take your comments very seriously and appreciate.
And I know you do, and I appreciate that, Mr. Howell.
I would say, 5 commissioners have not agreed on all of the
Oh, and I'm
policies
aware of
have gone out
that.
there. I do want to address one thing that's been brought up. You're the third speaker in the last 3 meetings that has brought up the issue of access to the courthouse. And I think we understand that, and I believe that there is a solution that's being worked on. Unfortunately, it wasn't available today, but I do believe by our meeting next week, we plan to have, if you will, a reasonable accommodation for people who are not able to wear a mask or unwilling to wear a mask or whatever, but there'll be a way to access the commission virtually, interactively, available next week. So that'll be something that we should be looking forward to, if that's correct.
And I understand and appreciate that, but it's still not the same thing.
I'm not happy with that either, but I do think it's the best we can do probably for right now. So I want the public to know that there is a plan in place that's being put together, and by next week, Lord willing, that will be something that's available. So thank you so much for
Very
your
well,
comments
thank you.
today.
You all have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Stout. Don't I see other questions? Okay, next up on the list is Carlos Coella, if I said that correctly. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
We welcome, and state your name and address. You have 5 minutes to address the commission.
My name is Carlos Coelho, 2522 North Greenleaf Court. I want to start first by letting you guys know that I moved my family here just less than 2 years ago from Washington, D.C. The reason we moved here was because we believe the Midwest is the heart of this country. We believe that what's happening in our nation's capital and how bureaucrats try to dictate the way we live is not the way the American life should be. We should determine our own path and our own destiny. By my accent, you probably noticed that I grew up in a different country, and so I've lived the consequences of dictatorial, overpowering governments. With that said, I want to ask the Commission, I want to request that you reconsider the mask mandate requirements for the county, Sedgwick County. I'm sure you've all seen when you're driving people in their cars by themselves with the windows up and they're wearing a mask. Or you might be driving down the street and there's a healthy person running by themselves outside and wearing a mask. I find this terribly concerning, and I believe you should too. Dr. Anthony Fauci from the NIH in Washington, D.C., from the White House Task Force, originally told us that masks don't help prevent the spread of the virus, or any virus. He based this on his almost 5-decade experience. Somehow now that the curve was addressed and hospitals have been empty, he's pushing for the masks. I ask you why? He's also been seen removing the mask whenever he thinks that the TV cameras are turned off. What makes him an exception to his own rule? I'm an architect, and I've, in my experience, visited multiple construction sites. It's very common to see these paper masks at construction sites because people that do drywall wear them. When they remove the mask, you can see that the drywall particles made it all the way to their nostrils. A drywall particle, just so you know, is 3 microns minimum. Probably they can be as large as 100 microns, and those are probably the visible ones. The coronavirus particle is smaller than the drywall particle by a lot. It's not 2 microns, it's not 1 micron, it's 0.12 microns. In other words, these paper masks and scarves and bandanas and all these things that we're asked to wear don't work. But you might ask and say, or you might say, well, it doesn't hurt to wear them if it makes people feel good. Well, actually, it does. They do hurt. Masks reduce our ability to inhale and breathe fresh air. There's proof now, after months of these enforced masks, that oxygen prevents us getting our own fresh oxygen into our own body, and instead we're inhaling carbon dioxide, which increases the acid and overwhelms the compensatory mechanisms of our body. Kidneys have to work harder, and they get strained. This is just one example. There's others that deal with respiratory issues like asthma and the heart. You please go to primarydoctor.org for more details about this issue. But it indicates the following, that the data shows that masks only serve as an instrument to obstruct our normal breathing, rather than an effective barrier to pathogens. Masks are neither effective nor safe. Members of the Commission, masks have become placebos to calm and appease those who have fallen victim to fear injected into our society with the goal to paralyze us and our economy. It's put neighbors, co-workers, family members against each other. The most dangerous side effect is the impact on our mental health, especially children. They are struggling and trying to understand this ordeal. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to follow the science and unite again as Americans. It's time to move forward with confidence.
Mr. Coelho, your time's up. Can you?
Yes, I'm wrapping up.
Thank you, sir.
I have more sources and information for you from the New England Journal, the CDC, and the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, and others. I will email all these to you. Let our county set an example for the rest of the nation. We are the heart of this nation. We don't need to follow DC. We should set the example for them. Please vote against any future mask requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I don't see any other questions. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
For articulating.
Thank
Well
you.
said, sir. Okay, next up is Emily Coelho.
I'm not used to wearing.
It's all right. Thank you. Good morning, Emily.
Good morning, Commissioners.
State your name and address. And
Emily Coelho, 2522 North Greenleaf Court, 67226. Good morning. We will never recover from the COVID recession if you continue to mandate operating rules for businesses and the personal behavior of individuals. I'm asking you today to let the mandate expire next week. The only thing we need in Sedgwick County is for the economy and schools to fully reopen without restriction. Local and state mandates that were informed by failed models which had predicted millions of American deaths in the spring destroyed our economy and created a paralyzing fear. This reliance on models and predictions instead of empirical data continues to haunt us. Here in the county, certain businesses are restricted due to their menu, or perhaps their hours have been capped by the county. Arbitrary physical distancing rules greet us when we enter church or stores, or prevent businesses from operating at full capacity. Mandating face coverings for everyone over 5 when out in public. None of these measures you've mandated are based on scientific evidence. But I have very good news for all of you today. Because we now have about 6 months worth of data, there is quite a bit of scientific data to inform our public policy going forward. Were you all aware that the real COVID death rate is just 9,210? Last week, the CDC updated their numbers, and only 6% of the total number of deaths we've been following and watching the count pile up all summer were from COVID. But your public health order cites 170,000 deaths as a reason to extend July's public health order. The CDC reported that the other 94% of deaths were linked to 2 to 3 other serious illnesses, heart disease, dementia, sepsis, etc. Although curiously enough, they included suicides and accidents in their death count as well, just because the person happened to test positive when they passed. The majority of the people who did pass away were of advanced age, and 90% were in nursing homes. Cases are not deaths. The August public health order cites 5.4 million cases across the country as a reason to continue limiting business and individuals in Sedgwick County. But according to Dr. Atlas, who's part of the White House task force, 99% of people who test positive have no serious effects from the illness. In fact, half of those people are asymptomatic. Those with symptoms might experience heavy flu symptoms and will need to stay home, and that's exactly what the CDC is advising, to stay home if you don't feel well. The commission initially acted to keep hospital beds empty when we knew less about the illness back in March. But now it seems that you all have pivoted to the case numbers. And Dr. Atlas says it doesn't matter how many cases there are, but it's who has the cases. Are they elderly? Do they have a weak health record? Do they have comorbidities? Did you realize that under 70, the infection fatality rate is just 0.04%, which is less than the flu? There's no risk to children, but yet the commission requires masking them over age 5. And guess what? I've seen parents masking children under age 5 all over this city. With 6,800 cases in the county and just 50 deaths, most of those deaths occurred in senior homes, but yet the mandate continues to lock down in one form or another the working and school-age population. I heard a recent discussion here about wanting more testing because the case numbers were slowing. But respectfully, commissioners, you're focusing on the wrong numbers. It's not the case numbers, it's who has a case. The commission transmission mitigation measures are not based on science. Dr. Atlas has described the science behind 6-foot distancing as embarrassingly weak. And proof that masks prevent the spread is also non-existent. But there are dozens of scientific studies that your previous speaker will email you that worksheet, that masks do not prevent virus transmission. Let's think about that. The 2 most prevalent symbols of COVID, masks and 6-foot spacing, and there's no empirical data to show that either are effective. The Sedgwick County Health Department recently credited masks and distancing for lower case numbers. But correlation is not causation. You cannot link the two things. In conclusion, COVID is a virus, and it's going to run its course. It's futile to attempt to slow the spread. Let us develop herd immunity. Please let the mandate expire next week and let individuals decide what is best for themselves. And thank you guys for having me today.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Emily. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
We look forward to receiving the information that, I assume that's your husband that talked to us earlier?
Yes.
So he'll be sending us some information. So
Yes, sir.
thank you. Have a good day. Okay. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
Consideration of minutes. Item A, regular meeting minutes of July 15th, 2020.
Commissioners received a copy of the minutes from July 15th, 2020. If there's any comments or changes or adjustments, I don't see any. I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any other comments? Being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz? Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Appointments. Item B, accept the resignation of Melody Miller from the Sedgwick County 4th District Citizens Advisory Board.
Mr. Papoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Papoon, County Councilor. Former County Commissioner and former legislator Melody Miller is asking to resign from Commissioner Cruz's Citizens Advisory Board and asks that you accept the resignation.
Okay. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Papoon. Yes, I would like to make that motion, but before I do, I'd like to thank Melody for her service. She is a valuable voice in this community, but because her voice is so valuable, she is pulled in a lot of different directions and is unable to serve in this board any longer. So if you haven't had a chance to, on a side note, if you haven't had a chance to try out her baked beans, I'll put a little plug in for her. They can be found in grocery stores around the city. But I'd like to make a motion we accept the resignation of Melody Miller from the Sedgwick County 4th District Citizens Advisory Board.
I'll second that. Any other comments? Being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. Motion carries. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item C, resolution reappointing Chuck Warren to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission.
Mr. Papoon.
Mike, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Papoon again, County Councilor. Metropolitan Area and Planning Commission is a board consisting of 14 members, 7 appointed by Sedgwick County and 7 appointed by the City of Wichita. This board is by interlocal agreement between the City of Wichita and Sedgwick County. There are 5 appointments by individual commission, recommendations by individual commissioners, and 2 at-large appointments. This appointment is on the recommendation of Commissioner Howell to reappoint Chuck Warren. We have a resolution in proper form and ask that you adopt the resolution.
Okay. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to just commend Chuck Warren. He's done a tremendous job on MAPC in the past. He's sharp as a tack. He understands the planning process extremely well. He's a true leader on that board, and so with that, I'm proud to make a recommendation or make a motion this morning to approve the resolution to reappoint Chuck Warren to MAPC.
Okay. I'll second that, and I agree this is an incredibly important board that serves our community in a very important way. So I'm glad to second the motion. Any other comments? Being none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. Motion carries. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
New business, item D, expiration place update.
Mr. Adam Smith, welcome to the County Commission. You've had an interesting first year on the job.
Well, morning, Commissioners. Thanks for having me today.
You bet.
I think I owe you every year an annual report on all of the activities of Exploration Place, but normally that comes due in sort of a November, December time frame. And I thought it might be a good idea to just take 10 minutes this morning to give you just an update on what's been going on at Exploration Place through the crisis. I commented, I've watched so many of your meetings and I've never actually been in the room before. And it's so much smaller than it seems online, you know. And I want to start by saying thank you. I know it's been a very difficult time for the whole community, and it's been, it's really reinforced our understanding of the role that you have as commissioners in the community, you know, looking at all the difficult decisions that you've had to make. Okay, the slide here, this photograph was taken in late February, and at that point, we were on track for a fantastic year. We were doing great on our attendance and our budget and our education programs. We just got through a very successful fundraiser. We just installed a whole new entrance plaza that looks absolutely fantastic, and you know, we were just gearing up for the big spring break and summer season. And then of course COVID came along, and I've used this photograph a lot because it was taken just about the time that the pandemic broke on our community, and it's been such an emblematic sort of photograph of the times we've all been going through. My report, it starts with bad news, but it does get better. We were closed for 106 days from March 13th. We reopened on July 1. In that time, we missed about 100,000 visitors that we would normally expect to have come through. And spread across, our fiscal year begins July 1, spread across the 2 fiscal years, we're anticipating about $1.5 million of revenue shortfall that we've had to had to deal with financially. We reopened July 1. It's been very, very slow since we reopened. What we're doing with our attendance is we're sort of comparing it to a normal year. So in July, we were at exactly 20% of where we were in the previous July. Things improved last month. We were 28%, and it looks like we're on course for a decent September as well. So hopefully that trend will continue. The way we structured our budget was we thought we'd start at 30% and end at 75% by next summer. So we got a little bit of catching up to do, but hopefully that positive trend will continue. We've got a lot of special measures in place. We did a big survey of our audience before we reopened, and we got about 750 responses from our members and community members, and they gave us some really good feedback on what they wanted to see from Exploration Place as we reopened. And there was a huge emphasis on cleanliness and sanitization and social distancing. So we took all that feedback on board, and I think we've had a lot of compliments actually from the way that we've been running the facility, because the kind of place we are, there's a lot of touching, there's a lot of kids around, and that side of it, it's way slower than we'd like it to be, but I'm glad we're open, and I'm glad the trend's heading in the right direction. While we were closed, we did take the opportunity to make some changes to the facility, most noticeably in the lobby. If you haven't been back, when you come, you'll see a big difference. We've opened it right up. We've relocated the ticket counter, relocated the food and beverage, and that was something that's actually very difficult to do when you're open. So it was something that I think from the first moment I set foot in Exploration Place a year ago, I felt the lobby and the whole process of entering the building was not right. And as we sort of looked at what we needed to do from a social distancing point of view and from a public safety point of view, it just made sense to do this now. So we've got like a mini TSA process as you come into the building. We ask everyone to sanitize their hands, and we take everyone's temperature, and that's been. I know that there's differing opinions in the community, but from our perspective, we've had a lot of people complimenting us on that. I think it's what people generally want to see us doing. So there will be some long-term benefits out of the changes we've made in the lobby as well. We've already seen our sales in the gift shop have more than doubled, which is good to see. Okay, I said there was good news, and the big change that COVID-19 is going to bring to our operation that is going to be permanent is the role of distance learning in education. Something that I've been working on for the last 15 years. And in my experience, I think in the last 4 months, we have literally made a decade's worth of progress in the way that society is accepting and understanding distance learning. So as I think as the new guy, I probably would have got Exploration Place to a conversation about distance learning maybe in a couple of years' time. But the circumstances just forced us to jump right into that. And I'm really proud of what our team has been able to do. And I'd like to talk you through some of what's been going on, because I think this is very meaningful change to our organization and to the way education is going to work in our community. It's gone sort of through 3 phases. The first phase was as you remember, we just went into lockdown. Everything shut down. Everyone's at home. School is no more. Families are having to educate their kids. So what we did as a response to that was we just, within a few days, started pumping out live and pre-recorded video content, and eventually that evolved into online quizzes and STEM challenges where we were encouraging families to do activities at home together and giving prizes and things like that. So we had this great sort of surge of activity in that sort of March, April, May timeframe, and ended up putting out over 200 pieces of content free of charge to the community. And tremendous response to that. We had over 300,000 people have engaged in that. So yes, we lost 100,000 people that couldn't come to Exploration Place, but the circumstances caused us to find a new audience. And then what evolved over the summer was we did Camp in a Box. So we realized that summer camp, which has been a big activity for Exploration Place over the years, was not going to happen. So we decided to put the entire camp program online. And these photographs are just sort of screen grabs from those activities. And this one, we were able to take what we learned in the first few months of doing this and really do distance education in a very high class way, and the way that that brings all the potential of it out. We put a survey on all of these camps, and the average rating that the parents gave to them this summer was 4.71 out of 5, which is about as good as it gets. And what really interested me was reading the written comments of all those parents, giving their sort of written feedback on this. And I think what they were saying was this: you guys are doing distance learning the way it should be done, not kids just sitting in front of a laptop being bored by something droning on at them, but really engaging them and making it interactive. And so each week the kids were doing 25 activities at home that we had sent them in the box. One of the things we learned was that distance learning is giving us the opportunity to do things we could never do before. So every lunchtime during the camp, we had a lunch and learn where the kids could interact with someone, and they could be anywhere in the world. So, for example, when we did Space Camp, all the kids on Space Camp, they talked to a real astronaut, a real astrophysicist, a real person at Space Center Houston that controlled the Mars rover. So this crisis we've been going through and has been kind of getting us to this point of exploring new opportunities. And also we found that the reach of our programming has really expanded. We got people buying Camp in a Box experiences from 12 different states, and we even shipped one to Germany, where there was a family from Wichita on deployment in the Air Force, and their kids were still able to keep connected to Exploration Place and science education. So as we move into the... I wish you could see some of the facilities we've created, because we just improvised these and commandeered spaces, and we've created 3 distance learning classrooms inside of Exploration Place. And as we move into the fall, we're sort of moving into that third phase of what's happening. We were contacted about 10 days ago by USD 259. I'm sure you're well aware that that it's been a very challenging situation for any school district, and USD 259 is obviously our core school district, and they've been working through all the challenges of COVID-19 and asked us if we could help in sort of an urgent situation to help provide science education to elementary schools in the district. So, long story short, we actually had a board meeting last week and considered this, because the district doesn't really have any funding for this, and it was on a very tight time frame. They needed content by next week. But we jumped in, and we're going to help and do that and provide 44 science lessons that will reach 17,000 elementary school kids in our community. And as we go through the rest of the year, last year we had 305 field trips to Exploration Place, and right now it's likely the number for this year will be 0. CDC is literally saying to schools, do not do field trips, and we want to create a virtual field trip experience where we can bring some of this high-touch interactive science education to our community. As we move through the rest of the year, obviously we've been in crisis management for 4 months, and in many ways that will continue. Each day brings a new challenge. But we're hoping as we move into the fall and winter to return to some level of normality. We're going to open a new exhibit called Rock U on September 25th. We'll keep supporting our educators in the community as as their needs become more apparent. And we are working on a new permanent exhibit. It's something that we had been working on for about 18 months as a project in development. But the next big exhibit that we're going to do is called Health Inside Out. And I think if COVID-19 has taught us anything, it's that good science-based community health education is something that's going to be valuable. So we'll be working hard on that. We recently got an award of $192,500 from Kansas Department of Commerce in the way of a tax credit towards this exhibit, and that's going to help us really kickstart the fundraising for that. Actually, on the distance learning stuff and talking about grants, we've got about $3 million of grant applications out right now. Nearly all of them are just looking for funding to help us continue this momentum in the way that we can do distance learning. We just started a strategic planning exercise. I would like to involve all of you in the conversation about what the next decade of Exploration Place looks like. So over the next 6 months, we're going to run through a process, and we'll look to engage you and get your input and feedback into that. It seems pretty clear to us that a couple of major themes are going to be part of the plan, as well as keeping the facilities top-notch. We're sitting on a very valuable 20-acre riverfront property, and we think there's a lot more we can do with that in terms of sort of the outdoor educational experience at Exploration Place. And as I mentioned earlier, I think distance learning is clearly a strategic issue and is actually quite a large opportunity for us. So happy to take any questions or feedback you guys have got. I wanted to end with something we'd like to do for county employees. One of the things I felt as just managing my own staff through this is it's a leadership challenge to keep everyone engaged and keep morale up in your organization, because we're getting battered every day in different ways. And as with the county, we have got a tough budget to try and manage, and we couldn't give any pay rises to anyone, and people have had less hours, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been looking to do anything we can to just to do activities that keep people happy and cheerful. And one of the things I thought that I could do, because I know the county's going through that with its employee base as well, I'd like to offer a free admission to all county employees to Exploration Place for a month. And maybe that can just be something that we can do to give back to you guys, because I know you've been working really hard through this as well.
Okay. Adam, thank you. A refreshing report from my initial observations, so thank you. Commissioner Cruz, we have a couple comments and questions. Commissioner Cruz first.
Thank you, Chairman. Adam, it's always good to see you. You kind of came at the strangest time. I hope you're adjusting okay with all of the new changes here. But I just want to say that this is an absolute fresh perspective that I think was needed. And I'm so excited that you've taken this on. You've made some bold changes. I love the Health Inside Out. I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about the music component. I know that we had a conversation about that. I just feel like this is very impressive that you've reached out to Houston. You've reached out, all across our nation, and getting people to come to us here in Kansas. So I don't have enough good things to say, and I really look forward to the future of this. I love that you're thinking about what we can do to activate the river. That's a very important topic, or it has been, in the past year or so. So great work.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Howell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say thank you for all you're doing for this community. I remember when the position was open, and I thought it would be an impossible position to fill. But you've surpassed my expectations, and you're just a tremendous leader. I want to say thank you for all you do here. You are a true visionary, and I know that this is a very important part of our community. And it's hard to find a way to make change that is difficult when you have a lot of opinions. But you're doing a tremendous job. I also just want to say thank you for all you're doing there. I wish I'd have thought of that lobby idea. That's such a great change. I love to see the picture. I didn't know that had happened, but I think that was a smart move, and so a great way to use that space. And I was honored and privileged to serve on that EP board for a number of years. I wanted to say I miss the board and thank you for being a part of that as well. I know that that's a great group of people that do a great job for this community as well. I want to say thank you to all their service to the community. And then I know that it's hard to think outside the box and find new things to do in a time like this, but you've done a great job with that as well. So I want to say thank you for being smart, trying to figure out a way to use Exploration Place in this strange time we live in. And then finally, I just wanted to ask a question. I know you were closed for a long time, but can you please explain, I guess, how is the Exploration Place open to the community right now, or is it, and what are your hours and that type of thing?
Well, first of all, thanks for the kind comments. You said nice things about me, but really everything that I reported on has been done by a team. And one of the great things that I've learned as a new person here is that I've inherited a very strong organization. And thank you for your board service, because and thank you, Michael, for being our current board member. One of the things that is absolutely fundamental to any nonprofit is its board and governance, and I am blessed to have had such a strong group helping me through this time. I've also learned a lot about my staff, and one of the things I've learned is I have a tremendously talented staff. All of that stuff that I was showing you, I didn't do any of it. All I said was go, and there's a tremendous team. We've reopened. Technically, if you go on our website, it says we're open at 25% capacity. So we've got a capacity limit that we put on the building and certain key spaces inside it, like the theaters. We have a 165-seat theater, but we've only got 41 seats available for sale for any given show. The truth is, it's been so slow, we have not come anywhere near breaching those capacity limits. But everything else is pretty much business as usual. We removed a couple of exhibits that it was not possible we didn't feel comfortable that we could keep them sanitized. We are on rotation closing galleries normally we clean every day, but after hours or before opening hours. But what we're doing right now is we're closing galleries in rotation and giving them a thorough clean during each day. So that's the essence of it.
Okay, so my final comments would just be to the community. I want to say I would encourage the community to understand this is another resource, another thing to enjoy, and it is available right now. It sounds like that word needs to get out, and it's a very generous offer to our county employees. Thank you for that. And finally, I just want to say you're a kindred spirit with your love of aviation, and I think to find someone with a love of aviation that you have to be in that position that's so important to this community. I think that you are the perfect person for that position. So just want to say I'm very, very impressed, and thank you for all you're doing here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Adam. Just wanted to thank you for coming here today, presenting us with this information. I so appreciate the enthusiasm that you bring to Exploration Place. Looking forward that hopefully later this year things will pick back up, get more back to normal, and that 2021 hopefully will be our best year ever, because I know you had so many things planned for the 20th birthday for Exploration Place this year that I know we're just planning on bringing those next year so the whole community can really wrap our arms around EP in a more formal way to celebrate that big milestone. So thank you.
Okay, and Commissioner Dennis. And
thank you, Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman.
O'Donnell, thank you for your service on the board. Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had an opportunity to bump into Adam just before the meeting. I wanted to publicly let everyone know kind of what the gist of our conversation was. He came into Sedgwick County and everything was great, and suddenly everything turned, and I appreciate his leadership during this trying time. We are truly blessed to have you here in running Exploration Place. That's one of our jewels that we've got that Sedgwick County supports. we want to make sure that it stays successful, because the things you're still able to do, even though that a lot of things are closed, are still helping our students out. And we appreciate that very much. And thank you very much for what you do. I don't want you to get discouraged. I want to make this, as soon as we can come out of this, the jewel that it really is. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Adam, and we had a lot of nice compliments. I'm glad it. I was worried when you moved here, but you did a lot of research and you wanted to be here, and hopefully the community's welcomed you
Absolutely.
with open arms.
One of your previous speakers talked about moving here drawn by Midwest values, and right. I actually think that going through a crisis together, it really brings it brings that out even more for me. So I feel like didn't want my first year to be like this, but right. it's been I think it's drawn our organization and our community together in a way that hopefully we can keep that. This whole distance learning thing, one of the nice things that happened is it brought families together in right. education. We've got them online. I wish I had time to show them to you. Every week we did this STEM challenge, and we've got a little sort of 1-minute summary, because the families would video themselves doing these science activities at home. I think those families are going to go and look at those videos 30, 40, 50 years from now and remember the time that it was a special time. So there's a silver lining to the cloud.
Yeah. You know? Well, your positive approach and your creative approach is worth noting, and thank you for thinking of the Sedgwick County employees. The offer for free admittance for a few weeks or a month is, what month is that?
Well, I think what we'd like to do is run it from now until October 16th. And the offer is for not just the employees, but for their families also.
Okay, so your communications department can get with Tom and Kate, and that's just a wonderful thank you, a heartfelt thank you from all of us for that effort. That's fantastic. So I don't see any other comments, Adam. Thanks again for what you're doing. Good luck with the rest of the year. Okay.
Make a motion to receive and file.
Been a motion to receive and file. I don't see any other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell. Aye. Commissioner Dennis.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell. Aye. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. Thank you again, Adam. Okay. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item E, a resolution amending composition of the Citizens Advisory Board for the 4th County Commission District of Sedgwick County, Kansas.
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. Karen Powell, Deputy County Counselor.
Good morning, Karen.
This item expands the Citizens Advisory Board for the 4th District by one member position. It, excuse me, that position would be a high school student, and it was indicated by Commissioner Cruz and I'm sorry, Commissioner Cruz and the others in the board indicated they thought this person would be of value to the board. As you might recall, early last year, when Commissioner Cruz came on board, she implemented the process for the board to be created, much similar to the 3rd District has a citizen advisory board, but the basic purpose of the board is to provide advice and recommendations to the commissioner. This would be Commissioner Cruz's and the county commission as a whole. The board advises on county matters, and its authority extends only to providing advice. The monthly meetings are open to the public under the Kansas Open Meetings Act. The county communications staffs the board, and we help with implementing any legal requirements that might need to be done. But I'm sure that Commissioner Cruz will have some comments to talk with you about, but in any case, I'd recommend adoption of the resolution.
Okay. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Karen, for being here and giving us that great explanation. We are excited. The board voted unanimously to expand to allow for a high school student to join. They felt, and I feel as well, that it's imperative to involve young folks and young voices, especially now with the way things are changing in our community. So I would like to, before I make a motion, I'd like to just say we meet the second Monday of the month. We've been meeting virtually, and until the board decides they'd like to meet in person, we'll probably continue that. We do have a couple of spots open, and I will be reviewing all of those applications that have come in so far. You can apply online. I hope to be making some appointments to meet with folks who have currently applied by the end of this week. So with that, I will make a motion to adopt the resolution to amend the Citizen District 4 Advisory Board.
Okay. I'll second the motion. And Commissioner Dennis.
Well, thank you. I was going to second it, but...
okay, I'm sorry.
I believe that this is an important position to add to the board, and I appreciate the fact that Commissioner Cruz is adding a student. I think their voices are very valuable. I appreciate, and I will support the motion. And I just wanted to remind everyone that I also have an opening on my Citizens Advisory Board, and same as Commissioner Cruz, if you live in District 3, you can go online and you can apply for my district advisory board also, or Citizens Advisory Board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. All right. I don't see any other comments. There's been a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Aye. Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Karen. And Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item F, discussion of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act.
Commissioners, Chairman Tom Stoles, County Manager, as Lindsay takes the podium, there'll be multiple facets to this agenda item today, and I just want to give you just an overview before we start. Lindsay will, as usual, talk about COVID spending status, and there'll be multiple components to that, including non-CARES COVID spending, CARES spending, Spark spending, and also elections SOS spending. She's going to start with a timeline for various programs, as Commissioner Cruz asked for that last week, and I think that will help to the public to understand the moving pieces of this. On the timeline component, we'd ask for a receive and file if the commission sees fit. She will also talk about an approval for the sheriff's office regarding a whole body scanner due to the COVID problem at the jail, which should help with that. That will be a vote we would need from the commission to move forward with that. And then receive and file on the COVID spending status. I'll also have, when Lindsay is completed, have Sheena come to the podium and give you an update on hirings of health positions, as she normally does. And then Tanya will talk about communications with CARES and all the moving pieces with that. So it's a lengthy article, or a lengthy agenda item, but we'll get through it. So Lindsay, if you'd start, please.
Okay. Morning, Commissioners. Lindsay Poe-Rousseau, your CFO. So as Tom said, the first thing we'll do is kind of do a report out on where we stand with all of the various categories of subrecipients. So I know everyone's really anxious for us to get those dollars out the door. I totally understand. There are many moving parts, and so I think being able to put pen to paper and show this to commissioners and to the public, hopefully you can use this as a reference guide if folks reach out to you. Hopefully we'll provide some clarity that folks need. So this presentation builds on a similar format to what you've seen before. Hopefully you all have copies of that PowerPoint at your desks. Just a reminder that the spending plan that you all approved on July 8th included a number of categories where we're giving money to external partners or external parties who are coming and seeking some support from you. So just some reminders of what those buckets are. We had, of our $99.6 million that we received directly from the federal government, we allocated $25 million for testing. Now, a good chunk of that is happening through the Sedgwick County Health Department, but as you've heard from Dr. Abla and others, obviously there's lots of work happening in the background to try and expand that and do some contracted testing through other parties. Another $10.1 million was allocated for 19 cities located in Sedgwick County. Those folks were approved to receive 50% of that funding up front. We allocated another $3.5 million for K through 12 school districts and or accredited private schools. with a 100% advance of that funding. $6.5 million to public health providers, and the three categories that were included at the time included healthcare, senior living, and public healthcare initiatives. Another $7 million was allocated to social service providers. The bulk of that was funding to support vulnerable populations. Another $1 million of that bucket was allocated for mental health support in the community, recognizing also that ComCare is continuing to provide service, and that's elsewhere. That's in the county's bucket. That's not listed here. And so that final amount then that was allocated to county use was $35.5 million, and we have another $12 million that's held back in reserve. And as we talked about the last time we met with the financial stimulus review team, we would begin to start looking at using up that reserve based on circumstances here in about 2 weeks. So we'll have some continued discussion for you then based on what we're hearing from schools and what we're hearing from the review team. So then the state provided another $9.3 million to us from their allocation of CARES funding, and that was tied to unemployment. And so the commission made the decision to allocate those funds in ways that would try and support the local economy, try and do some economic revitalization. So you have approved $5 million to be allocated through a small business safe operating grant program. That application is up and running through September 11th. And I know Tanya will talk a little bit about some of the communication strategy that's been done to communicate that to the community. Another $3 million was allocated for PPE, and we'll get into some of those details when we talk about the spending plan. And then finally, $1.3 million was allocated for workforce development. So trying to help workers who have a demonstrable connection to being unemployed because of COVID-19. And so that program is still to be worked out. All of this that we have been dealing with dates back to March 1st, and it deals with programs for expenses that go through December 30th. And we've heard lots of discussion about those timelines being extended, but we have yet to see anything really come to pass on that. So I think it's becoming increasingly important that we do try and get those dollars out the door. It cannot be used for revenue replacement. But something that is interesting, and as I was preparing a timeline yesterday, I saw the first note that I sent out to the organization on CARES on April 22nd. And I said, this funding is only going to be for local governments. And it is amazing how much has changed. And so you can see on this slide the amount of federal guidance that has changed over time. And even on Friday, we got new guidance that changed the terms from something we got in May. So it has been an exciting course of events, and we're all trying to keep up, and so we appreciate your patience as we work through that. Now, on the state side, they started their program. We started receiving some initial information from them at the end of June, and you can see that they've continued to provide guidance and webinars on a weekly basis that pertains to that $9.3 million. I said that there was a key change, some changes that happened. I just want to I think it is important for you all and for the public to understand that we are trying to keep up with the evolving guidance. This is a brand new program. CARES funding for us is unlike anything that's come out before. Treasury doesn't typically act as a grantor, just like the county doesn't typically act as a grantor. So we're all trying to do this at the same time. But one of the key things that's going to impact all of the folks who are receiving funding from us is this definition of subrecipient. So in the May Treasury frequently asked questions, we were told that a subrecipient is basically what comes out of the uniform guidance, which are the general rules that are put out for anybody getting federal grant money. And so you can see what that definition is. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Well, then again, this last Friday, we got Treasury Office of Inspector General frequently asked questions, and they actually changed that definition to say, at least in terms of reporting, the subrecipient is an entity that is going to receive $50,000 or more. And so we are actually going to have to report on those individually when we put that information into the system that they have developed and actually pushed out to us today. And so any of that funding obligation that is greater than $50,000 triggers this. And you can see what obligation means. It's a commitment to pay contract, grant, loan, or other arrangement. So anyone receiving greater than $50,000 or more from us is going to be part of this now. And they did continue to impose requirements in terms of how we monitor and how we manage our subrecipients. I think two key things that jump out for me that I would want to know if I was a subrecipient is that, number one, that frequently asked question document that came out last Friday says that the Treasury Office of Inspector General may audit the subrecipient when they come to audit us as what we're called the prime recipient. And so I think that's a pretty key factor, because the second part of that is that the Treasury has said that records must be maintained for 5 years after the final payment is made using coronavirus relief fund monies. So that passes along some obligations to the subrecipients that also fall on our shoulders. And so I think it's really important that people understand those parts. So we'll go through those categories. We'll move fairly quickly through this part. I think, like I said, I would prefer this part maybe be more of a reference guide for you all as you get questions, to help people understand what the process looks like. So for testing, yes, ma'am.
Can I just ask?
Yeah. Yes, Commissioner Cruz?
Going back to the auditing process for subrecipients. So if you could walk us through that. So we have a lot of subrecipients that are receiving these funds. We can be audited, our subrecipients can be audited. So let's find that a subrecipient is fraudulent with their spending of this money. Are they required, the subrecipient is required to reimburse, or the county is tell us how that's going to work.
So
worst case scenario, I guess. Let's play it out.
Okay, so let's say you have a subrecipient who gets $55,000 and it's found that they went and bought a Corvette. You know, we heard about something like that out of Florida, somebody who used their money not the right way. So what would happen is, if the Office of Inspector General is the one who catches that, the county is the one who's still on the hook. It was our money, and we didn't manage that subrecipient properly, so we are on the hook. However, one of the subrecipient agreements that Mike Fessinger will come up and talk with you later about includes provisions that allows us to at least be reimbursed. It doesn't preclude us from having a finding. That's still not a preferable result, but there would be some ability for us to be indemnified against that cost, to be able to get that money back, and then to return that to the Office of Inspector General. But we are responsible, and that's one of this important provisions on the county must follow uniform guidance regarding subrecipient monitoring and management. That's our responsibility to hold them accountable. And so we have our internal financial auditors. Each one is handling different areas. One's looking at risk assessments to see, are there warning signs for a subrecipient that we need to go out and maybe pay a little bit closer attention? Maybe we need to go on site. And then there's also the other internal financial auditors focused on the monitoring. And so once we've done that risk assessment and we understand what the risk is, how do we go about actually doing that monitoring then? So we're going to do everything we can reasonably to provide assurance to you all that that money is being spent appropriately. But at the end of the day, if the OIG finds it wasn't, it's still on us.
So are there any, do you have, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but is there any way to determine, or do you have any indication that there will be fines associated or interest penalties or anything? Or would it just be the amount of money that they mishandled? Should that happen? Hopefully it won't, but.
For now, I have not seen or heard anything about fines. I have heard some discussion about interest, but because we're not to that point yet, I don't think that set of guidance has been released yet on what to expect if that occurs.
Okay.
But I would not put it past them to charge us interest.
Well, I just think it's important for our community to know that there's a lot of scrutiny that could happen with these funds. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because I just want to make it crystal clear to everybody here. And I don't want to insinuate that anybody's going to do anything wrong, but I just think it's important to talk about. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks.
And we have heard from the GFOA that it is the Government Finance Officers Association who's in contact with the Treasury, that it's pretty well guaranteed that there will be audits, and we do expect that. So, and we'll do our best to be prepared. Any other questions I can answer? I can hop back over to the testing slide.
Okay.
Okay. So in terms of testing, this is probably one of the ones where we have least amount of definition at this time, because this world continues to evolve as we've heard and seen and read. So right now, the Sedgwick County Health Department has been purchasing supplies to do testing, nasopharyngeal testing, which is what MPS stands for. I've learned that now. And they have been contracting with various labs and or using KDHE to process those. KDHE is free. Those others we are paying for and would go against that $25 million allocation. They also, of course, have acquired or have attempted to acquire 2 Panther Fusion machines to do their own testing for an allocation of $2.3 million. The commission a few weeks ago approved reimbursement for WSU to stand up a lab up to $1.5 million, and so we are working with them, as Tim described yesterday during your staff meeting, to get that process up and running. And then finally, we know that we still need to increase our sampling. As I think you all discussed yesterday, the goal is to have roughly 2,200 tests per day, and we're not there right now. And so there may be some additional contracts that are required with providers in the community to help us do that. So those folks most likely will be subrecipients just sheerly because of the volume of dollars that we are using. So that is something that is on our radar. Moving to cities, again, they have been approved to get 50% of their advanced funding. We worked with BKD and Witt O'Brien's to put together a pretty detailed schedule in terms of when everything is going to occur, and then when monthly reporting will occur, and when reviews are going to happen, and all of that. So we're going to stay at a fairly high level for this discussion. The application deadline for cities was August 21st. They are going through initial review now for quality assurance to make sure we have the documents that we need and to do that risk assessment that we discussed. You all have already voted to approve that award when you approved the spending plan on July 8th. We anticipate getting those agreements to the subrecipients this week. Hopefully you will approve that template today so we can move forward with that. And we'll try and do that electronically using a product called Adobe Sign in the grant application portal that we have. So the earliest you could see requests from cities would be after they have gone through and documented that they have spent that full 50% that they got the advance funding for, and then it would be a reimbursement basis going forward. We expect that the disbursement of funds would be 3 business days after we get that agreement returned to us. And so then we can have a DocuSign to close out the agreement and process the payment, assuming we have all of their vendor information. The deadline for spending, and this is based on lots of back and forth and discussion with our auditors and consultant firm, is actually October 30th. Because this is a group that is receiving advance funding, we need to make sure that they get it spent, and if they don't, we need to get it back in a timely fashion so that you all can reallocate that to other uses. And then requirements that come with that, there will be, because they are getting advance funding, they will have monthly reporting requirements to show that they have made the payments on eligible expenses. And then again, depending on the risk assessment, they may have some monitoring that happens, anything from just a simple desk review and check to potentially going on site if there are some bigger expenses that maybe we need to validate. K through 12 schools, you'll see this slide looks just like the last one, but with updated information. It's pretty similar, except that these entities are receiving 100% of their funding up front, and so they will have monthly reporting. And again, because of the logistics we talked about, October 30th is the spending deadline for these folks, and that's what's included in the terms that we will send over to them if you approve today. Public health providers and social services. These are going to look nearly identical, these next 2 slides. This has been revised based on discussions that you all had with that steering team last Thursday, and the fact that we were able to put a deadline in place for September 20th. So folks are reviewing those now as they come in to make sure that they're complete and to make sure that expenses are eligible, and doing some follow-up discussion. We anticipate that the stimulus review team will review those on September 24th, and then if necessary, October 1st, just because we don't necessarily know the volume of requests that they'll bring in. So the earliest that you all could vote to approve award to those entities is October 7th. And then assuming that that's approved, we would get those agreements hopefully the next day to those entities. And then in terms of payment, It will all depend on the timing of when those entities get their agreements signed and returned to us. Now, the way our mandatory reporting works, just because of the timing, these folks would not necessarily be on a commission agenda until you can see December 2nd. Now, if they can get documentation in earlier, we'll bring it to you earlier. But that will depend on them. And so that's going to be an area where they'll have some control of that. Now, because we are reimbursing and not advance funding these, we have until November 30th for these folks to process their payments. And then we have some reporting, and we will have a pretty good crunched schedule in December to make all of this happen. And then again, requirements are monthly reporting, and then possible monitoring again, depending on the outcome of the risk assessment. So it is exactly the same information for social service providers. So we'll move to small business operating grants. So this is a program that's operated under the state, and so we have different schedules and different reporting that happen here. The application deadline, as you've heard, is September 11th. We are continuing to review those now. The earliest the commission could vote to approve award here, just because we do anticipate having 1,000 possible agreements, would be October 7th. We would get those agreements to those subrecipients by October 8th, and then again, we would ask you to go ahead and approve payment on those concurrent with your vote, because they are a grant award and not a reimbursement or not an advance funding. You can see the earliest possible disbursement of funds based on when we get those agreements back. There is no deadline for spending, although there may be some spot audits for this to make sure that anything that has been spent has been done on eligible expenses. We did get new guidance again on Friday that specifically addressed small businesses, that there must be some proof of impact from COVID-19, and so we are working with our consultants now to figure out exactly how we're going to make that determination to give the commission proper assurance. So you can see that's the very first requirement listed here on this section. Oh, I apologize.
That's all right. Commissioner Cruz.
I know, I thought you might answer it later, but I just wondered, how many applications have we received currently?
I believe we were in excess of 500, but the issue is we have, because you can't save and get back in, we had examples of 2 or 3, or of businesses putting in 2 or 3 applications, sometimes up to 5. And so we are working with our software vendor to try and help us weed those out, figure out what is the most complete application that we should use so that we're not accidentally in a position to kick out anything we don't want to.
Is the reason why, because, I mean, are they receiving, last week I had asked for folks to receive a return receipt instead of just, okay, you filled it out once you fill it out on the website, but is someone from the counties emailing them saying we received your application?
No, what we're trying to do is get with the vendor to do an automatic send. At this point, county staff are truly just overloaded at this point. So we are working with that vendor to get that in place. Unfortunately, the higher priority for right now has been getting that subrecipient agreement stood up. Okay. And then we'll try and weed through those things and do follow-up quality assurance.
Out of those who have applied, are they applying for the full $5,000?
Most are.
Yeah.
There are some that aren't.
Okay. So do we have a good solid plan with our communication staff? I mean, the close of this application is coming up pretty fast. So hopefully we are doing what we can to hit folks to apply.
Well, and I think Tanya will be coming up in a little bit. She'll be the third person to speak on this item, and maybe can get into that then, unless you want to have her come up now and speak to it.
Nope.
But I would tell you, I'm impressed at the thoroughness of their plan. So
great.
I think you'll be pleased, I hope.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, so hopping back into the requirements then for small businesses, again, proof of that COVID-19 impact, proof that they've operated in Sedgwick County as a business, and then again, possible monitoring that would come into play depending on a risk assessment, which is going to be built in and automatically applied to these applications. So then the final one we'll talk about is workforce development, $1.3 million. Brent has been coordinating with individuals in the community to try and solicit submit proposals back to us. We put together a form that they completed to put everyone on equal ground so we can compare apples to apples. And I actually, we have received some of those and passed those along to Widow O'Brien's for eligibility review. And they expect to get to that this afternoon. We just received those applications on Sunday. So this one is probably the one that's least fleshed out because we don't yet know what programs are going to be offered, and we need to tailor our reporting and deadlines to whatever programs are approved. We do anticipate bringing this program to you in 2 weeks. We hope to have all of the questions answered. We may get some of these applicants in front of Widow O'Brien's to answer some specific questions if we need to, just so we can expedite this process. So lots more to come on this.
Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions. So I know earlier when we were talking with WSU, there was some concern about how to work out the agreement between the funding that we had available and their needs. And all. Has that been legally figured out and worked out?
So we had our first, I would say, high-level team meeting earlier this week. And we decided during that session to break it into subgroups, including a legal group and a financial group. And so those teams will be working through that. We have our next meeting, I believe, next Tuesday or Wednesday.
Very good. Starting with the, I'm going to talk about different categories. I have brief questions about a few of these. With respect to the cities, so as of right now, we've not given them any funding as of right now?
Right. No one has received funding because we have not had an agreement to give them.
So just to confirm, is there, how do we determine how much of the $10.1 million is each city eligible to receive? Has this been earmarked, so to speak, or is there, okay?
It's been based strictly on population, and we did that based on the same way the feds gave the money to us and the way the state gave the money to counties.
The city of Wichita?
I'm sorry?
Does this also include the city of Wichita?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so if they don't have receipts to, if you will, claim the money that's earmarked for them, is there some point in the future that this money will be available to other cities at that point?
Well, so we have said the deadline for spending is October 30th, and then they'll have basically a period of a month for us to go through and review their documents. And if it turns out that there are not substantiated expenses, then we would essentially have them repay the money, and then it will be up to the commission to decide how to allocate that.
Okay. And again, the K through 12 schools doesn't require, that's also formulaic. So we're going to turn the money loose at some point. It's based on, I remember the formula. There was two components of that formula as well. Mm-hmm. With respect to the healthcare providers, the social service providers, small businesses, and workforce development, these are monies that are set aside. But in those four categories, I would assume it's kind of a zero-sum game. Whoever provides justification and application for funds, it's kind of a first-come, first-served basis on those categories. How's that going to work in terms of if someone puts an application in early, they might be considered, and somebody else, I mean, when the money's gone out of that category, it's gone, I assume.
So the Public Health and Social Services, we put that hard end date in last Thursday for September 20th because actually that financial stimulus review team had requested that there be some prioritization applied to that because there were far more requests than there are dollars. And so I don't necessarily think it will be first come, first serve. In fact, all of the folks who have filled out applications so far thinking that it was first come, first serve, have been responded back to say this is now going to be more of a competitive process. So if you want us to, they can't log in and edit their application, but they can get with us so that we can get in and do that for them.
So our strategy, if I was going to summarize what you just said and make sure I understand, we're essentially drawing a line in the sand. There's a date certain that says we have received all the requests in, we see how much money is available, and we'll, if you will, divide that money up amongst the different applications and requests on some type of a fair basis based on what we know right then. Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense. All right. Thank you for those answers, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Okay. Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is our contract in place with Lenexa?
Yes, it was, and Tom can maybe speak to that on the details, or Mr. Fessinger since he's in the room.
And when will we start that?
You said after Labor Day, Tim?
After Labor Day. Very good. Do we have the supplies we need for saliva test?
Tim Kaufman, again, we're working through those details, and we should have those by the end of this week or very early next week, so we'll be able to start using those then.
Okay. And those 2 machines that we approved a long time ago that have not arrived yet, will those do saliva testing?
Yes.
Okay. Well, my second question is, do we still need those 2 machines, considering the fact that we're banking on WSU and Lenexa to fulfill all of our needs?
I believe we do. It saves us money in the long run to be able to process those tests on our own machines. It also allows for that influenza A and influenza B testing to be done, which we know flu season will stretch well into 2021. And so if the CARES money runs out, we still have some capacity internally to do that COVID testing and the influenza A and B testing on those machines.
Okay. And if we're getting supplies in the near future so we can start using this function in Lenexa, are we working with the school districts to be able to get those supplies out to the school districts so that they can do mass testing?
We are, sir. And let me just back up just a second on the comment of capacity. Between the health department and WSU, part of the positioning of this and the discussion going along was to increase capacity for this region for the future. And that's why the 2 machines for the health department, which increases their capacity tremendously, I think was a strategic acquisition. Same with Wichita State. Moving forward with the schools, we've already put out that we will be testing teachers. And then as we move forward to saliva-based, the goal is going to be to come up with strategic points where we can do sampling out in the field. So that could be at schools with the use of a school nurse, or an industrial nurse at a manufacturing company, or we're looking for partners within the community that run health clinics that have the kind of staff and setup to help us with sampling. So Tim and a team are working toward that, but clearly with schools, the low-hanging fruit there seems to be the nurses, and it's just the working through the process of how we get samples to them, how they acquire the samples from kids or teachers, get them back to us, and get them tested appropriately.
Hey, but if I'm not mistaken, isn't our contract with Lenexa that they'll do up to 2,200 a day?
I don't know that they had a capacity. It is an open-ended contract. I don't know that we have a minimum or a maximum. It's a pay-as-you-go kind of contract. Between our health department and Lenexa, I think the goal is to get up to 2,200 a day. Tim might correct me if I'm wrong on this, but they have capacity to do several hundred a day.
Okay, but I guess my question is that we're going to have the supplies next week. We've got a contract in place next week. Do we have a plan in place for next week?
That is being developed, and I think, as Tim mentioned yesterday during staff, we're going to phase into that. I don't know that we'll be doing 2,200 samples a day next week, but
we will not.
Okay, very
There's
good.
no question that we will not do that. Again, as I mentioned yesterday, we're going to have to ease our way into this. You're correct. The goal for the community is to test 2,200 per day. We've got community partners right now that are testing. Right now, the daily average is somewhere between 600 and 800. We'd like to get a day across the entire system, and we'd like to get that number to 2,200. And much of what we sample will then go to Lenexa, and they'll test that for us. But we're going to roll it out in a thoughtful, planful way. We will not be testing 2,200 folks early next week.
Okay. And my final question, I brought it up yesterday during the staff meeting, but I appreciate the fact that we're going to test teachers, but I want to make sure that we have a plan in place so that we can test them outside of the normal business hours somehow, because all the teachers that I know are in school right now, whether they've got students or not, they're in school. And so from 8 to 12 is not good. So we need a plan there.
As I reported yesterday, we're in the process of continuing to add staff. Sheena's going to talk about some of the staff that we've added. We will be expanding hours and extending hours, and we'll be adding Saturday collections as well.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I might also add on that, if there's a capacity and if we can get school nurses to take samples as possible, they could give the sample while at school.
Okay. Lindsay, thank you. This was a great report, a good reference, good summary, good, every category's, it's easy to read and follow. So thank you. So this is a report that we want to receive and file. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to receive and file. I don't see any other questions. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell? Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye.
Okay, it's still
Okay.
me, if that's okay. On this item, we actually will be asking for a vote for approval to make a purchase. So on Monday, I had emailed you all an eligibility memo that we received from Widow O'Brien's. The sheriff's office has requested to purchase a whole body scanner totaling approximately $149,000. And so this is related to their responsibilities for detention of inmates at the jail, where staff work to ensure the safety of the public, inmates, and themselves. The request or the analysis from Widow O'Brien says that it is critical to mitigate major points of physical contact given the level of traffic at the jail facility. By implementing this change, which would be a whole body scanner to review anyone who's coming into the adult detention facility, it would eliminate the majority of contact searches relating to persons entering the jail facilities for any reasons, and it would allow the sheriff's office to continue their duty to search inmates with a reduced chance of exposing themselves or inmates to COVID-19. And so essentially what this product would do is do a full body scan. It takes 4 seconds and it displays that scan. And then if there is contraband, it eliminates the opportunity for exposure because the deputy knows exactly where to go to find that contraband. And so it would enable staff to social distance to a greater extent than what they can do with their current operations. So the quote includes the scanner, tethered Ethernet connected workstation with monitor, freight costs from San Diego, 2 days of formal on-site operator training, and a 3-year warranty on parts and labor. And that total, like I said, is $149,000. The research was done to try and see if they could find a different scanner, again, for that cost reasonable analysis. But based on limitations of the space in the booking area, the particular product that they have identified is the only scanner found that fits in the existing space without modification. And so WIT's conclusion is that the cost to purchase this whole body security scanning system is eligible, allowable, and reasonable. So I'm happy to try and answer any questions you might have, but otherwise I would recommend that you authorize this purchase.
Okay. Yeah, we all did receive a memo. Commissioner Dahl?
I'll make a motion that we proceed with the purchase of the full body scanner.
Okay, I'll second that. I don't think there's any other questions, so Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. The motion carries, so get it purchased.
We will do that, thank you. And so then my final item for my particular portion of this presentation is to give you updates on COVID spending status. So the last time we met and had this discussion was 2 weeks ago. So our status today of COVID spending, including all sources, is $14,604,096. The last time we spoke, that was at about $13.1 million. So we are up fairly significantly in these last 2 weeks. Within the non-CARES spending category, we are continuing to incur some costs in the general fund where the expense is necessary, we need it quickly, and we don't necessarily have the time to get it to Witt O'Brien's for an eligibility review, although hopefully we'll be able to reimburse these costs. So we are up to $1.33 million in the county's general fund. That is up $157,000 from the last time we spoke. The bulk of that is because we have increased our contract with a vendor, DRS, who is providing our FEMA support and also providing the insurance coaching for us. They have been invaluable in that regard. We do have property insurance coverage for communicable disease and also for pollution. FEMA requires that you exhaust those efforts before you come and seek funding from them. And as you've probably seen in the news, also FEMA is changing rules as we go about cloth masks not being able to be used in court, being able to be reimbursed for use in a courthouse or for schools. And so these guys have been very helpful on those 2 insurance claim coverages and also on trying to wrangle the FEMA rules. So we did increase that $155,000 to a total of $200,000, which is the primary reason for that increase. We remain at $22,000 of COVID-19 spending in the Fire District General Fund. We have not had an increase there. And then again, we did receive coronavirus emergency supplemental funding of $58,000, and that has been already spent and committed, and there is no change in that really now for a couple months. So now we'll move to CARES spending. So of the county's direct allocation of $99.6 million, we have spent $10.2 million of that allocation. That is up from $9.4 million 2 weeks ago. So the primary reasons for that $850,000 increase, a huge part of that, $268,000, is because of increased contracts for temporary employment services, as we've discussed. HR has shifted some of that obligation and responsibility to those temporary employment agencies to try and expedite the process a little bit. And so we started to see those increases. We spent another $138,000 on disinfecting wipes to restock the organization. So we do have weekly requests to the organization for what do you need, what are we getting low on, and then purchase orders are made. So that was a bulk purchase for disinfecting wipes. We talked a couple months ago about EMS, and the last time we spoke, I told you that they were making those purchases for the durable goods that they had requested. Since we last spoke, they have put in another order, $96,000 for 40 IV pumps and the software that goes along with those. We have had a payroll posting since we last talked, so of that, $52,000 has been spent for the paid leave that's mandated under the Family First Coronavirus Relief Act in that 2-week time period. We've had an increase of $48,000 for cleaning services, as I would say nearly all of our departments and buildings have increased the cleaning that they're doing to try and protect staff and citizens. $43,000 for technology. Again, the bulk of that is trying to get people set up for remote work in a longer term setting. The short term worked well, but we've been trying to solicit information from the organization on what do you need to do this for a longer term. Another $41,000 has been spent on software. The biggest part of that, $36,000, was to purchase 100 office licenses for health department temporary staff. And then finally, we have spent $27,000 since then on CARES temporary positions. So we started with $99,636,917. Like I said, we've spent $10,240,665. So that leaves us today with $89,396,252. Although, as you have seen and heard, we have plans to get that spent quickly, and we'll start to see those numbers rack up. So shifting then to the spark spending, so the money we received from the state, we did receive an allocation of $9.3 million. Thus far, we have allocated about $2.8 million of that. Almost, I would say every penny of that so far has been toward buying items to go in those PPE kits that are going to go out to businesses. And so this is up $479,000 from 2 weeks ago. Part of that is because we bought 150,000 face shields at about $250,000, and then we spent another roughly $287,000 for floor decals, 60,000 of those to help people social distance, and then we had that wipes cart that I talked about earlier, that order for carts that had been applied against this the last time we spoke, that has now been moved into the county's bucket because that really was for county spending. So that's why those differences are what they are. And then finally, for elections, we know that the Secretary of State did authorize up to $420,000 of spending for them. They are at $155,943 of that. I know Kate gave you an update on those ballot boxes. They also have 2 temporary positions that they have been using since late May. They have purchased high-speed ballot scanners, printers, printer maintenance, sneeze guard, and tablet accessories also with that funding. So that is my update on spending. I know that was a lot of information, and I apologize, but please let me know if I can answer any questions. Otherwise, I recommend you receive and file.
Okay, Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. So I see that we have all received and I see that Sheena's here, but we have all received as a county a survey around childcare. And I wonder, out of this bucket of all of our money, we don't have anything allocated to help with childcare, do we?
That's correct.
Was there a possibility, because Sedgwick County is not the only place that is trying to find solutions for childcare for employees, I'd like to discuss how we can broach that subject. That's a pretty hot topic around our community. The reserve that we have, oh, thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that. The reserve that we have in our bucket, I mean, how do we talk about that? Can we talk about that for a sec?
Sure.
Or can you get with Whit O'Brien to see how we can make that available to folks in our community who are struggling with childcare expenses?
And so it would go beyond county employees. You would want to do.
Yeah, I would like to.
daycare
I mean,
provider.
yep. I think it's important for us to set, and I don't know how we do that. I mean, maybe that's too broad, but we got to get people back to work, and we need to have a safe place for children to go if they're not in school.
I mean, I can certainly ask Whit O'Brien's if they're having any programs like that across the country, and if so, how they're operating. We can report back on that.
Okay. Well, and I really just want to commend our staff. I mean, Sheena and everybody who developed this survey to try to help our employees manage this situation. I know personally, I'm hoping to work with the folks in my neighborhood. My daughter's going to be home, so trying to figure out how I can maintain, my schedule. This affects me personally, and I just want to make sure that other people in our community have the same type of resources, especially if there is some funds available.
Okay.
Okay. So you need a motion to receive and file that report.
Please.
Okay, I'll so move. There's been a motion and a second to receive and file this report. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner Dennis? Commissioner Howell? Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay, as always. Next up, Tom? Sheena? Morning, Sheena.
Good morning. Kate was passing around our updated staffing report for you. I had sent one out last week as well. As of Monday, August 31st, we have filled 32.5 positions at the Health Department. We have 27 positions vacant on the county staffing table and 69 vacant positions with the staffing agencies. Both of our staffing agencies, ADECO and Interim, have filled 43 positions. And I will say that was as of last week, so currently we probably have more that are employed by the staffing agency. We are just about a week behind with those numbers. But overall, our numbers are going up as far as county hires and for the staffing agencies. We're working on a weekly basis with the health department to identify what their needs are and talk with the staffing agencies and address those. And we have also updated our career site. So there is a list of those COVID positions with a redirect to both those staffing agencies. Happy to stand for any questions you may have.
Okay. I know you've been sending these before, so appreciate the update. And thanks for all the work you're doing.
Yep.
I don't have any questions. I don't know if anybody else does. Is this another one we receive and file? Okay, make a motion to receive and file.
Second.
Been a motion and a second to receive and file the temporary staffing report as presented today. So no other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. Okay. Next up, Tanya.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Tanya Cole, Assistant County Manager. Last week at the CARES Stimulus Review meeting, Communications heard a desire to make sure that our minority business communities were aware of the CARES funding opportunities. So Communications has been feverishly working together to put a digital and mailer campaign together to put information out to these communities on the CARES funding opportunities. So today, I believe we're going to be able to push out a digital campaign to target these minority businesses regarding our $5 million for safe operating grants for small businesses that we know has a deadline of September 11th. And so I'd like to pull that up for you. Kate, it's the other one. So that is the digital campaign that we'll push out today. And that will go out through September 11th, and we will do that through our social media, and we'll work with COP Media as well to push these social media ads out through Facebook. We'll do it through Twitter, and we'll do it through LinkedIn, and we'll do some geofencing ads as well. So again, we'll make sure that this hits the African American communities, the Hispanic and Latino communities, as well as the Vietnamese communities, to make sure that they understand these $5,000 in safe operating grants. So we've also put together a mailer for the CARES Act funding, and again, that will target the minority communities for the public health and social service industries that we now know that is an extended deadline of September 20th, and this is what the mailer will look like that will go out. And we have been working again with our communication team that consists of CML Collective, Christina Long, A&C Bilingual Resources, Claudia Amaro, TRAM with the Wichita Chamber, and Tammy Bradley with Bothner and Bradley. And again, as I mentioned, COP Media, and of course our wonderful communications team that has been working on these two campaigns. So I would be happy to stand for any questions on this, but again, this is a result of hearing what was indicated at our stimulus review team last Thursday.
Okay. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Chairman. First and foremost, thank you for your speedy action on this. I mean, we talked about it last week, and here we are this week with actual design. So we can waffle all day on how it looks, but at least it's there and we have it. I just want to make sure we're right with the deadlines, though, because the top one, do you need funding to stay open? Is that one for the small business grants?
This one is for the...
That's all public health?
This is for the social service and public health care.
Perfect.
September
I know we were
20th.
having some.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. I'm hopeful that we're getting them to the right folks. I know that that's vital to the success of this. So I'm just glad to see this today, and I can't thank you enough for how quickly that you worked on this and got it accomplished. So thank you to you and your team.
Okay. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, do we have an estimate on costs and number of businesses that we're targeting with these efforts?
We don't, on the mailer, we don't have that right now. We're working on that as we speak. As far as the digital campaign, what we're doing is we're just basically swapping out what we currently had, which was our healthy behaviors. So we're just going to swap out those digital ads and put in place these, the digital ad that I spoke about for the Safe Operating Grant. So no difference in cost there on what we currently have in our costs that I mentioned before, which was the $150,000 that we're working towards with our public awareness campaign. I do not have the cost for our mailer at this point. We're still working on that.
In terms of a percent of all businesses, do we know what any idea what percent of all businesses out there that would be considered small businesses or social service or health related?
I don't at this point, Commissioner. We're still working on that list, and as soon as we get that information, which I think we're going to have very shortly today, I can get that information to you.
I certainly do support getting this information out to the minority-owned businesses. That's not a problem. I just, in my comments last week, last time we met and talked about this, was my opinion is this is not just available just to them. It's available to all businesses that are similar to them, whether they're minority-owned or not. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
It's not just for minority businesses, it's for all businesses.
Correct.
I would like to see us I know it's late, and unfortunately the deadline is just around the corner now, but my comments last week were that we ought to be making the same effort for the entire community, not just for minority-owned businesses. I think that every business ought to have a right to make an appeal or to access these funds fairly and equally everywhere. I don't want to exclude anybody. So I appreciate the effort. I'm disappointed that this is not reaching the entire community, and I think that's my opinion. it's a mistake. I support what we're doing, obviously. I just wish it was slightly broader to the entire pool of all businesses. And so I guess I support it, but I wish we had a different strategy here. But thank you for your report today.
Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you. I think the reason this was a more targeted effort was because the stimulus review team mentioned they did not receive applications from minority-owned businesses, and so, or they didn't receive to the level of that they had received from other businesses. So the thing about the online ads is those are going to hit pretty much anybody and everybody that sees them. I do want to say though, on these, there's no deadline. So on the online ads, I'd like to have a deadline placed on there because specifically for the businesses, I mean, that deadline ends next Friday, the 11th. So that's pretty quick. So if we could, I know that there's a lot on there. Tony?
It's right there, Commissioner, in the red. It's kind of covered, but if you can see in the red there, it says September 11th.
But the other two, it's not on there.
And I think those are just, I think he just pulled some pieces out of there, but this left side is what the ad will look like. This left side here is what the ad will look like. I think he just pulled out some kind of pieces of the ad on the right
okay,
side.
So they're not going to be like,
correct.
You know, where
yes.
you see.
Yeah,
I mean,
we will, on all those ads, we'll make sure that the deadline is on all those ads.
Perfect, thank you. So I just want to reiterate, I think that, you know, the direction is from the actual review team that's seeing all of these applications come through and trying to make sure that we hit those populations that are disproportionately affected by this virus. So I appreciate your work again, thanks.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you. Yes, I believe the impetus of this was because we talked about how the African American Alliance was doing such a good job of reaching out to their community, but we specifically mentioned some of the Asian populations and Hispanic. I know we had mentioned working with the chamber and the Hispanic chamber and stuff, but primarily because I know we had talked about Commissioner Howell and his district had the Asian population, is making sure we reached out to them. So I believe that was the genesis of this conversation. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tanya. So another receive and file. With that, I'll make a motion to receive and file. Been a motion and a second to receive and file Tanya's report on the communications. No other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Aye. Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. So Tom, thank
Chairman,
you for the third report.
before
You've got
yeah,
some comments, closing
thank you.
comments?
Before we wrap up this item, I want to go back to the child care issue that Commissioner Cruz brought up. This discussion within the county started with the leadership team upon commencement of school. And the federal system allows for some extended family medical leave if your child cannot, or if your schools are not open, so that you as a parent may stay home extra time with them. Many of our emergency workers, fire, EMS, sheriff, are not eligible for that. So the discussion amongst county staff was what can we do for those people if schools are not able to, and we accommodate basically K through 5 kids, and they would have to remote learn. So that's how that discussion initiated. I'm not sure that we're looking at a CARES solution for that problem. We were looking at a county, first of all, and the reason that the survey went out is we're just trying to assess right now how many employees could be impacted by that. So we're just trying to get some rough data around. And then if the data shows that we have several dozen or maybe 100 employees impacted, then we go to the next step of what can we do as a county, as an employer, to provide a centralized location, maybe where kids can come and remote learn while their parents are working, so we can keep our EMS and 911 dispatchers working. So that was how that whole discussion started. I don't know that we were looking to CARES money to solve that as an employer. I do think it's worthy, as Commissioner Cruz brought up, to talk to WIT about funding for that type of need in the community if it arises or if businesses begin to solicit for that. So we will do that work. I just want to make it clear that as a county, we were looking at this as an employer, as a way within to take care of some of our emergency workers so they could continue to work. So just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Okay, with that, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item G, report of the Board of Bids and Contracts regular meeting on August 27th, 2020.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Joe Thomas, Purchasing Director. The Board of Bids and Contracts on August 27th results in 2 items that we are seeking your approval for. Our first item is the AccuBrine Blend Truck Loading and Blending System for Public Works Fleet Management. And that recommendation is to accept the quote from Cargill Salt based on a Sourcewell contract 052919 CGI. And this will be for an initial purchase of $76,448 and to establish contract pricing until July 17th, 2023. And our last item is the onboard mobile gateways for various departments, and this recommendation is to accept the quote from Cradle Point Incorporated. This is based on the NASPO contract AR 3189, along with the State of Kansas Participating Agreement 42860S, and this is in the amount of $74,008.56, and it is also to establish contract pricing good through October 1st, 2026. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you may have and recommend approval.
Okay, thank you, Joe. I don't see any questions, so good work. So I'll make a motion to accept the bids and contracts as proposed.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to accept. I don't see any other comments. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz? Chairman Meitzner.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
You bet. Thanks, Joe. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Consent agenda.
Morning again, Commissioners. Tom Stolz, County Manager, recommend approval of consent items H through R with the exception of K.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the consent items H through R with the exception of K. Do we have a second?
Second.
Yeah, thank you. Motion and a second. Any other comments? Being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell? Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Motion carries. Okay, Tom, item K.
Item K, sir, between the time of publication of the agenda on Friday and current, we've had some minor changes, and Mike Fessinger from the Counselor's Office is here to go over that.
Hi, Mike. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mike Fessinger, Assistant County Counselor. As Tom said, just due to the schedule that your materials were provided to you for briefings, and then during some time earlier this week, some changes were made to these templates. I'll just break those down for you briefly. The first change is to remove some ambiguity as to the spend by date for the subrecipients. As Ms. Poe-Rousseau mentioned, that date is October 30th, and that was not at least clear enough for me in that template, so we've shored that up. The second change that we made is just in the educational institutions agreement, where we adjust the breadth of the permissible initiatives that the schools may engage in using CARES money. That's to make that commensurate with action that this board took last month. And finally, we just wanted to make clear that municipal institutions will receive that 50% allocation up front, with then ongoing reimbursement to equal the second 50% of their allocation to occur just on a reimbursement basis. We thought originally we could handle that in the scope of work, but again, I think Lindsay made the great point just to send that into the first page of the agreement, so that's what we did there. So those are the 3 main changes. Otherwise, I think there were 1 or 2 typographical errors that we corrected. With that said, I can stand for questions on these.
And again, this is just the template of the agreement.
That's correct.
That the subrecipients will have to complete.
That's right. The intent is that by approving this template, we then simply insert the subrecipient's information in the allocation.
Right.
And you will also approve that information separately. With both approvals, then we can efficiently enter into this agreement and get them paid.
Let's hope that all can get done before they make another change that we have to change.
That's the hope, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the clarification, and appreciate that's why we pulled item K off of the consent agenda. So I'll make a motion to approve as presented the item K. It's been a motion and a second. No other questions. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Madam Clerk, Next item, please.
Other.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. I know it was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, but we have our ribbon cutting at the new traffic signal and lane expansion at 55th and Meridian this afternoon. Members of the USC 261 school board will be there. The mayor of Hayesville, Bruce Armstrong, will be speaking. Commissioner Meitzner is kicking us off. So we're really looking forward to that. So special thanks to Public Works for getting that done on time and under budget, which are both actually under time, that they got it completed earlier than they thought, and under budget. So kudos to Public Works and the team. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Looking forward to it. And just for the public's information and the commissioners, we will, after this item, well, next we will be recessing the meeting to go to our fire district, and then we will come back from the fire district meeting because we do have a couple of executive sessions that we have to go to. So that's our schedule for public to know and the commissioners to recall. So with that, I make a motion to recess from the Board of County Commission meeting to enter into the Governing Board of Fire District.
Second.
A motion and a second for recess. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. Okay, we have recessed from the commission meeting, and I will now call to order the governing body of Fire District 1. Madam Clerk, I've called meeting to order. Madam Clerk.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner Dennis?
Aye. Present.
Commissioner Howell?
Present.
Commissioner Cruz?
Present.
Chairman Meitzner.
Present. Okay, Madam Clerk, next item. Public agenda. I don't think, does anybody from the public want to address the commission? We didn't have any emails, and so we will close public agenda. Madam Clerk, next item.
New business. Item A, report of the Board of Bids and Contracts regular meeting on August 27th, 2020.
Hi, Joe.
Good to see you again. Well, good to be
You
back.
got your fire hat on this time?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I think I left it in the car, so. This is the meeting of the Board of Bids and Contracts on August 27th, and so we have one item to present to you this morning. And this item is to each of the 107-foot aerial trucks for the Fire District Number 1. And this recommendation is to accept the low proposal from Conrad Fire Equipment Incorporated. And this is in the amount of $2,486,809.30. And so we'll be happy to try to answer any questions you may have, and I do recommend approval.
Okay, Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe, you know, I always ask questions about trucks.
Yes, sir.
When I read the bid board minutes, all it gave me was numbers on that it says these trucks both exceeded their life expectancy, but a 5 and a 5 and a 4.5 don't mean anything to me because I don't know what we're talking about on it. Again, as I mentioned on the Peterbilts, we were getting rid of for Public Works is that those are subjective numbers, and I don't know how many miles that we have on these things, how many hours we've got on these engines, and we're talking about $2.5 million on this expense. So I think we need a little bit better information on why that we need to replace the 2 of our fire trucks at a cost of $2.5 million. Morning, Chief.
Good morning, Commission. Chief Williams with the Fire Department. The hours that are on those 2 vehicles is, one of them is 119,188 miles and 8,900 hours of pump time. The other one is 116,000 miles and 73 in pump hours is what their timing is.
And 119,000 miles is excessive miles on a $2.5 million. Well, $1.5 million vehicle?
Yes, sir. On a fire truck, it is because of the excessive use and excessive wear that they get. That is an excessive amount for a fire truck.
It's an awful lot of money to spend 119,000 miles, so we drive cars longer than that.
You're right. The thing that we have documented is that these two vehicles have been out of service 455 days in the last 3 years. So out of the last 3 years, 455 days, one of them has been out of service. And, last Sunday, one of them's in the shop right now because a week ago Sunday it blew a turbo on the way to a building fire in Pack. And, that's part of the reason that we're really pushing is because the dependability of the trucks have become, in our opinion, very dire.
Are we buying the exact same model and brand?
It's not the same brand. The Sutphen company that built the two aerials did not bid on this process.
And these ones that we're buying are going to have better reliability?
We certainly believe so.
Did we work? The downtime on those is amazing with a vehicle that doesn't have very many miles on it. Do we work with the manufacturer and say, why in the heck are they breaking down so much?
Brian would have to ask that, but, we're going through the manufacturer to get parts. We have to on those trucks, go to the manufacturer for parts, but he would have to answer that.
I'm kind of disappointed if we spend that much money and we can't keep them running.
Good morning, Brian Ritchie with the Sedgwick County Fire District. Just to maybe expand on what Doug has talked to you about, these trucks have on an average of about 8,200 engine hours, which on an average car that would be probably, if you average 30 to 35 miles per hour. The 119,000 mile figure isn't really correct. So it's more like 250 to 300,000 road miles. Do we work with the manufacturers? Absolutely. We've maintained these trucks on a 4-month interval to, try to keep them in the best shape that we can. Unfortunately, I don't think these trucks was great from day one. So I think that's been a lot of our problem over the course of their lifespan here.
Hey, this new brand that you're buying, it's more reliable?
Well, as technology changes, we'd hope that would be a true statement. The industry's changed a lot since these trucks was built in 2007.
And the number of days that it was down, that's concerning. Is it the chassis or is it all of the pumps and other things that make this a firefighting vehicle?
Well, unfortunately, we can't go locally and buy parts because most of these parts come out of either Michigan, Ohio, or Indiana. So anytime that you need a part that's not stocked locally, you have delays. It could be weeks, it could be a few days, but every time that you need a part that's not in stock here, then it's a special order. Then you have inflated costs because you're paying for expedited shipping and all things like that. I currently have trucks waiting on some electronic components that I don't know when they're going to get here. So that's just some of the dynamics that you get into on some of these specialized vehicles.
So part of the procurement process then, do we ask them if they can give us priority on getting parts, or how do we know that when we buy this vehicle that we're going to be able to get parts for it then?
I don't think you can honestly answer that.
So does that need to be included in part of the bidding process, that we have some ability to get the parts that we need on a priority basis?
Well, in our spec that we write, we try to use parts that we've had very good luck with. So if we're brand specific, like if we would say a Chelsea PTO, we've had very good luck or very little failure within the fire service in my 35 years of doing this type of stuff. So that's why when we get specific, there's a lot of that knowledge going into writing that spec, saying this is what we want. So to minimize downtimes when we need parts.
So in our procurement processes, we put the bid out. Do we have some kind of requirement that it's got X number of hours on a pump, or they're going to have to replace it, or any kind of warranty, or?
Yeah, what we did in this spec here, we've increased, in the fire industry in a whole, has increased their warranty timeframes. When I first started working on fire trucks, you got a year bumper to bumper, and if it failed outside of that, it was on you. In the spec that we wrote, the engine on this one has a 10-year warranty, the transmission has 5, the pump has 5, so there's a lot of warranties trying to protect our investment or the cost that we'd absorb through the normal maintenance process and in the event that they fail. So a lot of that is written into the specification to where it hasn't been in the past. So,
Well, do we keep a record of these old companies? When we have something down 400 and some days, that's unacceptable in a fire truck.
And that may be part of the reason why they didn't bid this time.
Okay, well, we need to keep track of the companies like that and make sure that we don't consider them for future bids.
Well, we've certainly had some heated conversations, of one, for what parts are the lead times and cost, that you kind of feel like you're being taken advantage of. But unfortunately, I mean, that's just kind of being in a specialized field. I'm not saying it's fair, but it's just kind of the way a lot of them do business.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also have a number of questions. Thank you for the presentation, but I'm curious, normally these are brought to us through our fleet manager, and Director Penny Poland, I believe, does this normally. Why is this one different?
We worked through Penny on the 15-point process, and we've worked through her. We didn't ask her to be here today because we worked with purchasing solely on the bid acceptance.
So just a comment. The points on these are 14.5 and 16.8. That's what the backup material shows. So one of these actually hasn't even hit the 15-point mark yet.
Well, on that 15-point scale, one of the categories is the condition mark, and when she pulled it off the computer, the condition mark was not added. So there's 2-point piece of this that could be evaluated and added. So if the condition piece was added, it potentially could be 16.5, and the other one would be 18.5. Is that correct?
And Chief, what's the lag time on time of order till time of receipt?
The bid on this one was 11 months. One was 13 months, and the top bidder, the low bidder actually, that the best bid was 11-month build time.
Okay. How many of these aerial trucks do we have in our fleet?
3.
And so we're replacing 2 out of the 3?
Correct.
And I'm curious, what's the justification to go from 75-foot aerial to 107-foot aerial?
One of the things that we have learned with the 75-foot aerial is it doesn't reach the needs that when they were purchased in 2007, they believed that they would be effective, but we have found out that they come up short in most cases. We found that out. If you want to put one of these aerials at the roof of residence, you got to understand 100 foot is the reach. And if the house sits 75 foot back from the street, your ladder will not even reach to the front porch. So that extra 25 foot makes a difference between you reaching the roof of a 2-story home from the street. I was a captain when we bought those 2007s, and in Hayesville, we went to practice on the Sarah Lane apartment complex, the 3-story complex, and we can't even reach the balconies from the street of those complexes. It was really disheartening to think you had this great piece of equipment and it came up 10 foot short in most cases. So, and obviously we found that out at Andale in the church fire that we lacked reach. And so we believe at this time that it was important to get that extended reach.
This 107-foot truck would not have been, maybe it would have, I don't know, but the Andale fire has got a lot of other aspects to that situation. We don't want to get into that today, I don't think. We had a solution in place there, but it was removed obviously during the fire, and we don't want to get into that, I don't think. These 2 trucks, are they going to go on Purple Wave, and what's our expected? How much of this are we going to recapture when we sell these trucks?
Yes, they would go on Purple Wave, and I don't know. The tender, we just sold a tender that brought 50-some thousand. I can't remember what, the Violin, the other engine we sold didn't bring that much, 25,000 each. Brian can answer that one.
Typically, when we dissolve apparatus, it's sold through Purple Wave, and it's a no reserve auction. But typically, we just sold five surplus apparatus. One sold for $51,000, and then the next one, it was a pumper, which is just the regular average fire truck. It sold for $17,500 to an Oklahoma City department that could use it. So the monies that we're going to gain from selling them is probably going to be minimal. I would say on these trucks, between $50,000 and $100,000 each would be what they would sell for.
Let me just make I guess let me ask another question. In regards to the maintenance of these vehicles, do we just, based on hours of use, do we just plan on replacing the pump motor and things like that on a certain schedule based on the number of hours of use it's had?
Well, typically the manufacturers give us maintenance cycles. We see these trucks, I mean, we feel and touch them every 4 months, whether there's nothing wrong with them or not. That's when we get them in, we do the preventive maintenance. We're taking visual inspections. I mean, we're looking at brakes, we're looking at suspension, we're addressing any pump issues that we have. So we're looking at those every 4 months, which is basically, the manufacturer tells you to do it once a year. So we're touching them 3 times a year. So in my opinion, they're getting good maintenance, and they've got competent people working on them. So I think a lot of it's just these aerial devices running up and down some of the roads that they have to run up and down is really, it's puts them in an extreme severe duty conditions. I mean, they're not designed to go up and down washboard roads. So I think that's a lot of the failures that we see, especially with some of the pump and aerial stuff. Not so much on the chassis, because they should maintain, they should live through that. But we do a lot of work because of because of the condition of those roads.
The number of hours you guys provided, you said about average of 8,200 hours. Is that pump time, or is that just idling time?
That's engine on time. So anytime that the engine running, that hour meter is running, whether they're pumping a fire or they're idling or they're actually going down the road. So.
Is it safe to say most of that probably is not pumping then? It's probably more idling?
Yeah, I would say probably these trucks probably have, I would say, with training time and pumping, house fires and stuff, they're probably about 25% of those hours.
Okay, so I think fire trucks are pretty, the way they're used across the entire nation, I assume there's a lot of idling time on these trucks by design. This is not surprising that they have that number of hours of idling.
No, what's the surprising, I think, I have never seen fire trucks with the amount of miles that ours have on them. I mean, we're doing a lot of, we're doing a lot of movement. So typically to see 120,000 miles on a first responder truck, that's an every alarm truck, is not going to say not really. It's really unheard of, from what I can tell. I mean, I've been doing this since in the '80s, and I remember at that point. I mean, the times were different then, but there's times we sold trucks that had the 20 and 30 and 40,000 miles. We thought was tremendous. So.
I'll just give my opinion, and my colleagues can agree or disagree, but I think the mileage is an argument. We ought to obviously have that. We need to understand the mileage and understand how we compare to other municipalities in that regard. And the age, one of these trucks is 18 years old, and one of these trucks is 13 years old. And of course, if it took a year to get that in, it might actually be a year younger than I just stated there. So those are reasonably good things to consider as we buy new trucks. I'm less convinced about the hours. I don't think that's a compelling argument. I know that's in the formula, but another thing that's in the formula, which I think needs to be reworked, this issue of maintenance. A lot of this is preventative maintenance. If it's a planned downtime, you're doing something like, say, replace a pump on a certain number of hours, or you're taking it in to replace tires or to grease the chassis, or whatever it is you're doing, that you're doing normal maintenance. The time that it's in the shop, getting that maintenance, and the money that's expended to get that preventative maintenance ought to be excluded from this maintenance category. What should be included is unexpected downtime, unexpected repairs. That's a reasonable consideration, but right now the maintenance component of this includes them together. And I think that's disingenuous to the formula to have it done that way. And that's what we agreed to in 2017, but I think that we need to go back and visit this again. I would like to support this. I want to support our firefighters, obviously. I have some concerns about the way this has been presented today. I would like to support getting the trucks, but I'm troubled with the way that we kind of got to this point.
Well, unfortunately, in our software system, we can't separate, I guess I'm going to use the term abuse damage versus general maintenance. I mean, we do a lot of preventive maintenance, and a lot of our repairs are based off that preventive maintenance program. And it's the time that we create the work orders, we don't know, because that's the first thing we do when we bring the truck in. We create the work order. We do the PM, and as we do the PM, we note stuff like it may need a brake job at that point. It may need pump work at that time. That was been, not disclosed to us when it was brought in. So at that point, I mean, we don't really have I guess we could do another mechanism outside it, but again, it gets into, it's just our software system. I'm not going to say it's lacking. It's just never been used that way to do, what you're asking, but it could probably be done that way. So, I apologize for that, but when we run reports, I mean, that's the numbers we get. But in all fairness, everybody in the fire district knows we've chased these trucks a lot on the road. I mean, we could probably give you a report of how many times we've been out there on road calls. That would be a perfect example, or kind of to tell you how many times that we've been called away from what we're doing to go fix it on the side of the road. And those numbers would probably be staggering if you knew them.
And I understand the limitation of the software. I think we need to find a solution to that. I don't know what the right answer is, but we've got some smart people in this county organization that can figure that out. I think we just need to find a way to break that down into.
I mean, it's a good software system, but we do have limitations within it.
Thank you for the answers. Appreciate that.
All right. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Chairman. Hey, Chief Williams, can you answer just a quick question? When you get a call that you need to go put out a fire, what's the most important part?
Getting trained people on scene with the equipment.
Quickly, right?
Yes.
And so you mentioned that one of these fire trucks that we're trying to replace broke down on the way to a call.
Correct.
So that is very concerning to me as a citizen who would use this fire service. I mean, I want you there quickly if my house is on fire. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the recommended action of the boards and bids and contracts.
Second. Been a motion and a second to approve. Don't see any other comments. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Aye. Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. Okay, is there any other from the fire? I don't think so. So with that, we will adjourn the fire district meeting, and we'll return to the county commission meeting.
Thank you, Commissioners.
You bet. Thank you. Okay, we have next item,
Executive session.
Okay, Commissioner Cruz.
I move that the Board of County Commissioners recess into executive session for 15 minutes until 11:45 for preliminary discussions relating to the acquisition of real estate.
Excuse me, Commissioners, if I could we do the other executive session first?
Certainly.
Because we have an attorney here.
I was just going with the first one in my stack. Yep, certainly.
Sorry,
Okay.
Commissioner.
Okay, we'll correct that and
I will
strike that. And we'll
begin
go with the
again.
new one.
Okay.
All right.
I move that the Board of County Commissioners recess into executive session for 15 minutes until 11:45 for consultation with an attorney for the county regarding matters deemed privilege and an attorney-client relationship in order to discuss pending litigation, and that the Board of County Commissioners return to a live broadcast. We'll be staying in this room from executive session at 11:45.
Been a motion and a second for executive session. No other comments. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Aye. Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. We will adjourn to executive session. in this room. formal action taken, we will, I'll make a motion that we extend the same executive session another 10 minutes, returning at noon, straight up noon. So there's a motion.
Second.
And a second to extend this executive session another 10 minutes. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell? Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner.
Aye. Okay. Sorry, media, we'll have to vacate again, and we'll continue for 10 minutes. Okay, we have returned from executive session. No formal action was taken. And now we will, next item is, I will hand over to Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. I move that the Board of County Commissioners recess into executive session for 15 minutes until 12:17 for preliminary discussions relating to the acquisition of real estate for the purpose of potentially relocating county departments, and that the Board of County Commissioners return to a live broadcast from executive session at 12:17.
Second. Been a motion and a second to go into another executive session. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Aye. Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. We will adjourn to executive session. Thank you for everybody's patience as we work through these. Oh, okay. Okay, we have returned from executive session. No action taken, no formal action taken. So I don't see we have any other business before the commission. So with that, we will adjourn for the day.